Hi, my name is Phil Bolander, and I'm back with another pop. This pop is actually the fifth and final in a series that I started earlier this week on Monday. And so pops are points or perspectives, specifically my points or perspectives. And they are all about leadership development and business transformation. And with that comes leadership development and business transformation comes personal and professional development as well. So topics that I talk on and have lots of points or perspectives to share. So I'm really excited that we're rounding out this week. This is the fifth in the series around change plus skills equals success. I've been sharing with you some stories and hopefully some key insights around some companies that I worked for during my 35-year corporate career. First was Prudential, second was Humana, third was Cigna, fourth was the Hartford, and then today I'm going to talk with you about Accenture, working at Accenture. So this pretty much represents about the first 25 plus or minus years of my career. So about 2/3 of my career was spent with these five companies that I'm talking about this week. And so the idea here is to share with you opportunities that I had to be involved with change and transformation and turnarounds, and then what were the skills, competencies, and knowledge that I gained as a result of that. And so what I'm going to share with you today is that I went to work for Accenture, and I was over the moon. I was so excited about working for Accenture. In fact, when I think back on it, I still am. So Accenture being the company that it is, and me getting to join it and work specifically in their capability development area, which today might be known as talent development. So, things continue to evolve and change. So the role at the time was capability development. And I think more fitting today, it would be known as talent development. And so it was a really amazing role for me because it was a global role. I was getting to work in San Antonio with responsibility for offices in Brazil and Argentina, and my colleagues were all around the world. So it was the first time that I stepped into a role that was really, really rich with this global leadership opportunity. And then, of course, it was about delivering leadership training to the leaders in these offices that I was serving across the Americas. So this was just like the perfect job. It was a dream job. It was everything that I had ever hoped for. And I continue to be extremely grateful to the woman who hired me and her confidence in me to be able to go in and do the job that I did. So this global scope just like blew my mind. It was amazing. And so what happened was there had been a mandate, if you will, by the managing director globally for all of these offices throughout the world to implement a curriculum for leadership development. And there was quite a large population of people who were supposed to be trained in these core curriculum in the different offices. And so, I was in the Americas, there was somebody in Asia and in Europe and so on and so forth. And India as well. So what was interesting about it was when I picked it up, there were a lot of challenges in it because, the leaders didn't want people to go to their leaders, the ones that reported to them. They didn't want them away from their jobs. And so they weren't allowing them to go to the training. And then there's just a whole list after that. So we'll just leave it at that there was resistance to putting people in these classes. And so it was an uphill battle. And as I like to say, some of the jobs that I took on were getting from the base of the mountain to the top of the mountain, and it was sheer and covered in ice. So, there were massive challenges for me, and those were the jobs that I usually ran after. And so lots and lots of change had to come with this in order to get people to support this curriculum and then eventually be successful with attending it and taking away the lessons learned. So one of the things that I learned while working at this role, not only was the global leadership, which was really, really exciting for me, but was also this opportunity to work virtually, because I can remember getting on conference calls at like 5 o'clock in the morning and sometimes earlier, because the team around the world would get on and we would have conference calls, sharing information, knowledge transfer, et cetera. So this world of working virtually was really sort of blown out, if you will, for me. And then the other thing that was really interesting about it is that this was not the first time. However, it was one time in particular where I worked in a matrix organization. So back when I worked at Prudential, there was a time where I had 3 leaders that I was working for, one for human resources, one for operations, and one for training and development. So I had three leaders in 3 different locations. So I had some early on training around what it was to be in a matrix organization. So now here I am at Accenture, and I'm working for the site lead, and I'm also working for the head globally of capability development. And so that created a matrix organization structure that I was involved with. And really, quite frankly, I thrived in it and I like it. A lot of people are adverse to it. I find matrix organizations to be extremely effective when people within them know their roles and responsibilities and how to carry them out. So that's my own bias, because I really do favor the matrix, and had a lot of experience between Prudential and Accenture. And then also, as I had the opportunity to develop organizational structures, I made sure that where it made most sense to bring that matrix organization in as a part of the overall. And then what was really exciting about this was all about knowledge transfer. So being in the, we'll call it capability development to keep it in in time with what it was called then, there was a lot of knowledge transfer across the role, across the leaders that I was working with. And so it was really great because early on I went to Europe and I attended a train the trainer program, and I met some of my colleagues who I went on to work with. I had an opportunity to go to India and actually participate in a knowledge transfer there. And then one of my Indian colleagues actually came to the US and we engaged in knowledge transfer here. So that whole notion of knowledge transfer became really, really robust for me in this role, because we were doing it not only at the global level, we were doing it virtually, we were doing it in person, and it was having a massive impact on this overall mandate that had been given out by the managing director. So it was really, really exciting. And probably the most impactful learning that I had from this was working across cultures, because not only in my role was I working in San Antonio, and so in San Antonio, there's cultural diversity within the office that I was working in, and that was to be expected because that's pretty much how I had been throughout my entire career while I was working in the US. This also gave me the opportunity to experience the cultural diversity in both Brazil and Argentina, which, if you know anything about them, they're close to each other, and yet they've got some very different ways of going about doing business and so on and so forth. So please don't make the assumption that because I worked in Latin America in these 2 countries that they were identical. They weren't. And so then also being able to work in Europe, being able to work in India, these cultures really taught me a lot about what it was to embrace diversity and inclusion, and then ultimately equity in the roles that I took on from there. And so what was really exciting about this was, if you remember, I started in 1982 at Prudential as an individual contributor, and now we go all these years later. So we'll call it 25, 26 years later. Now I'm in a leadership role that has scope that reaches around the world in terms of working with others. And so that really was probably one of the most exciting things, was getting to work with all the different cultures. And it actually set me up for my final role, which is where I worked with people in different countries. And I think if I had to think about it, I would come up with as many as 20 countries during that period of time that I worked for that company. And so, this was an opportunity to really learn and develop those skills and competencies around working with people from different cultures. And so the change was I left everything I knew in the healthcare industry and went into the business process outsourcing industry. So I was working in, the global world of how work got outsourced to other places in the world, and making sure that the leadership that was running these offices that were serving these clients was spot on, that they were developing their unique leadership styles. And so it was a very, very exciting role for me. It really opened up a lot of learning. So the change of going into that provided me the opportunity to develop skills and competencies and knowledge that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And that is a theme in my career. I was taking the risks and taking on the jobs that required change, required transformation, and required turnarounds in many cases. And in doing that, that's where I found the most opportunity and the best opportunity to learn these skills, knowledge, and competencies that I can now share with other people. So it's not by happenstance that I developed this unique leadership style over 35 years of being in corporate roles throughout the world, 5 continents, I think 20 countries or more is what I said. It was intentional. It was intentional. And I knew each and every time that I was taking a risk, because let's face it, when you take on a role that involves change as a leader, you have a massive risk, massive, because doing the work that's being maintained and sustained doesn't really require a lot of innovation. No offense, no judgment. It doesn't require a lot of innovation, creativity, just in time, SWOT responses, that type of stuff. And so I lived in a very heightened period of time as I was going from one change role to the next. And what's really great about it is that I was able to develop these skills, competencies, and knowledge as a result of it. So I'm really excited about having shared this series with you this week. 5 days, 5 companies. One might think it's like the old days when you had five days, 5 countries in Europe. If you're old enough to remember, those tours that were offered back then. The idea here is to give you some insights into some of the experiences that I have, give you some insights into the skills and competencies that I have, and then also allow you to get to know me, because what I know is that it's so important for people to know people who they're going to work with or want to work with. And so I don't have the luxury of being in rooms and doing a lot of networking right now. What I do have is the opportunity to put these pops out there so that you can listen to them and you can share them with others who might have an interest in working with me. And so from that standpoint, I continue to believe that these are serving a purpose and that they're meaningful to you, and that when you look at somebody like me, and I've said this before, and it's not from a place of I'm bragging on myself, because people who know me know that that's not necessarily how I go about it. Rather, what I want you to know is that with a guy like me who had a 35-year corporate career, who's now had his own business for 3 years, focused on leadership development and business transformation, I have a unique set of skills, competencies, and knowledge that no one else in the world has. The same as what you have is unique and no one else in the world has. So what that does is it positions me to be able to put myself out there to serve and support people who might want to engage and collaborate with somebody who has what I have, or what I've experienced, right? So I'm really grateful for this time this week. I'm really grateful that you stayed engaged. I'm really grateful for the comments that you've made. And I'm really grateful for the fact that you continue to follow this and that you're sharing it with other people. So by all means, reach out to me if you want to have a conversation and you want to see about what it takes to go beyond this and actually get to know each other in such a way as to decide whether or not we could work together. And I'll just say, I've worked with thousands of people across all of these years, across all of these places. And I continue to enjoy each and every one of those relationships in memory and also in experience right now. So reach out to me. I look forward to talking to you with much gratitude. Bye.